I'm just going to pose some questions. Let me make a statement. Narratives are created and narratives are carried by individuals. So when I look at my comments and I see people saying, and this is no swipe at anybody in the comments. People saying there's no nuclear material, there's no nuclear bomb, there's no nuclear threat. I'm in agreement with it. But I need you to understand that everything that you're coming with is a fraction of a narrative that somebody created, right? And so when it comes to issues in the public sphere, it ends up being a battle of who can put out the best and most strongest narrative and who can carry how much water is carried. The carrying of that water depends on the influence of the person. If you watch the video I just released just now, which YouTube had a problem with it, but it's still there, I laid out strategically and showed you and exposed what was being said, how it was being said, and how it was affecting the conscience of the American people. And then geographically, how it was affecting people. And I showed you the graph that had spiked down. And I said, it's a dangerous time because something has to happen to spike this back into the conscience of the public. When you look at the issue from 100,000 feet, and I'm going to be very, very short with this, I'm going to pose some questions to you because I'm not going to make this as statements because it ends up getting into dangerous territory. But if you were to create a cover story for something you were going to do later on that was a nuclear event, wouldn't this be good cover? If someone had a actual bomb, wouldn't the best place to hide the bomb be next to a nuclear reactor? If you had all these things in place, a narrative in place, you injected a narrative of strange drones, you injected a missing nuclear material, although, and you know the average human being will not go and actually vet through it. They're only going to read the headlines. If you had all these things in place and you were waiting to do something, wouldn't you want the narrative to die down? You set the stage perfectly. I mean, the stage is set beautifully for an event. Now watch this. If you wanted COG to go into effect, you would need to have the incoming president and his whole crew all together all at once. I'll say, when you ponder these questions in that one statement, then you take into account what Donald Trump said about him not going to that location, and then you factor in better question. What was the effect of 9/11 on a divided nation? Does anybody remember what happened after 9/11 to the morale of the nation? Do you think that could be simulated again in this media environment? Do you think a catastrophic event could somehow unify people? What was the result of 9/11? What happened right after 9/11? Just questions. Could we have another 9/11 event? Could it be dangerous for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and the Avengers to be going to football games together? How would the public respond to a catastrophic event of that nature in this existing media environment? How would the media spin something like that? Would liberals respond the way we've seen them respond when Donald Trump assassination attempt happened the first time? Would they respond like, oh, I wish they would have killed him? All these questions would have to be on someone's whiteboard somewhere in the creation of this narrative, because we got to the point to where it's definitely a narrative created. We vetted that it's a psychological operation, and I stopped there because what comes next is the speculation, and this is speculation, and the questions as to how the people respond to these things. So how would they respond? How would conservatives respond? How would people in the middle respond? And remember, you who pay attention to this content, you are a small fraction of the American population. You who dig into details of things, you're a small fraction of the American population. The rest of the American population gets push notifications. They see stuff when they get off work. They hear stuff in conversation with friends. So the mistake that people make is you look at the world from your perspective through your eyes, even though the world doesn't see the world through your eyes. So those are the questions that I present to you as it pertains to what the tail end of this narrative creation is, because it's created. The disturbing thing, and this is a statement I will make, the disturbing thing to me about all this is that people are coming out and they're going along with what makes zero sense. The mayor that I showed you in the last video, he's going along with what makes zero sense, and it's insulting to the intelligence of every human being that has an attention span. The mayor has staffers, he has aides. You mean to tell me the mayor that of Bellevue did not literally go look at the report and see what was missing? That's the disturbing thing to me. That's the most disturbing aspect of this. What is he afraid of? Or is he just that dumb? I'm not sure. That's the thing that bothers me. It's bothersome. It's troublesome. Extremely troublesome. Next question. Hypothetically, let's say there's a nuclear event, because that's what the narrative is built up to be, and Donald Trump is still around. The whole Avengers team is still there. What happens to Inauguration Day? Do the American people have enough oomph in them to go into the streets under those circumstances to say we don't want war with a foreign country? Do the American people have enough hoots to march? What about the marchers? The old left that was anti-war, are they still around? There have been people who talked about planned events and things that are going to come down the pipeline across all kind of spheres of Twitter, YouTube, everywhere. But nobody's dug into it to actually find the real narrative. So now that we've located the narrative, could you call that narrative a cover story? Would it qualify as a cover story? Would it qualify as a good cover story? These are the questions you have to ask yourself to get to what's really going on. Is it an effective cover story? How effective would it be as a cover story? Will people see through this? If you could imagine a room full of people, smart people, plotting and planning and scheming, these are the things that they would have to write on the board. These are the discussions that they would have to have. What will be the consequences of the actions? Could you get away with such a thing? What will be the outcome? What will be left? Next question. If there was a meltdown of a nuclear reactor, could it be blamed on a foreign nation? In context of drones, when they say that the drones aren't from a foreign nation, does that make sense? Would it still have the same effect as the previous two instances that we talked about, a hypothetical situation that we talked about? Would it still have the same effect? Could you still blame it on a foreign nation? If you were moving a nuclear device, where would you hide it? Or the best place would be to hide the new radiation spike? How high would the radiation spike be from a real nuclear device? These are all the questions that I believe should be asked at this point in time. Today. So if you're a person that's on social media, you got a nice following, and you see somebody like the mayor of Bellevue being interviewed by two pundits, those are the questions that you go and you ask the pundits. A series of questions. Why would you pose it as questions? If 100,000 people, 10,000 people went to an interview and just asked questions, you're not making a statement, just ask the question. What does that do? What happens if one of them actually responds to the question? What does that do to the narrative? Somebody who had 10 million subscribers asked the question. What would that do to the narrative? How would that affect what's on that whiteboard? You dig? We're in the dark waters right now. The deep part of the dark waters right now. If you understand what I'm saying, you understand. If you don't, you don't. You heard me? You heard me?